Hey, it's that latte time again because it's way better than a regular coffee. Well, listen, after that fantastic latte, I'm going to be reading to us here from my book entitled Latté. This is chapter 4, and I apologize, it's been a couple of weeks since I've last read. So here we go. Let's not wait any further. So listen, as I had shared, by the end of 1991, we were on our way back to our old town of Brakpan on the east rand of Johannesburg. And to be quite honest, Vanner and me, that is now my brother who's 4 years older than me, we were quite gutted with the fact that we had to move back to Brakpan. First of all, Brakpan did not hold a lot of great memories for me, as it reminded me of all the events that had taken place in chapter 1 in my toddler years between 4 and 6. Another bad aspect of us moving was we were losing out on our life in what we thought was paradise, the paradise of the bushveld of South Africa. In Hammanskraal we had rivers we could play in, we could fish, we were chasing snakes, we were riding wild donkeys and goats, making kitties, and it was a fantastic time to be a boy. But moving back to Brakpan, it was sort of like back into the suburbs, east rand of Johannesburg, and it was hard for us. For my brother Vaden, it was also very hard because he was elected as head boy at Klipdrift Primary School back in Hammanskraal, and so after his election and selection as the head boy, we had now had to make the decision to move back to Brakpan, and that was absolutely devastating to him. For me, it was also very difficult because I had to start all over at a new school, a school that I did not know. At least for Vanner, he had some old friends that went to the elementary school or primary school we were now going to start off again. And so I was dreading the idea of having to start all over, as it was so hard for me to make friends in the first 2 years of school. I really missed my friend Johan Leroux, who had been my saving grace in the town of Hammanskraal. But at least I knew that I would be able to see him perhaps once a year, as the two of us had promised each other that I would come and visit him once every year with a school holiday. Life back in Brakpan was also interesting, as we had to move back to the old plot of my grandmother. What had happened was, after she passed away, the plot was sold to a cement factory. But the houses remained on the land, and the cement factory in the meantime rented out these houses. So we were able to at least rent one of the houses, and I believe it was my oldest uncle, Uncle David's house, that we were living in. And so life back on the plot was also not exactly the same as it was 3 or 4 years before that. All my uncles and aunts were not living there anymore, and we only I think knew one other family that was on the plot, so it was totally a different setup. When school started, Vanner and me felt like it was Hammanskraal all over again. I was scared as anything to start and attend another new school, and together with that, it was challenging. No, okay. To bring it back to the scariest situation, I believe, for us, with it having been school, I still remember the first day of the new school year in 1992, on which my mother had to go and enroll us at the office. We were standing there in the office, and there were a lot of kids that had to be enrolled, and I very quickly found out that there was another boy who was in my class, and I jumped at the opportunity to ask him if he would be my friend, to which he replied yes, because he was brand new as well. And so I was delighted. Like, on my first day, I didn't even know this kid. I was just like, listen, I want to make a friend. I'm just going to start making friends with this kid. And he introduced himself, and his name was Andre Mostert. And so the two of us were in the same class, and we were assigned to a new teacher's class. And things were really looking good for me on this first day, because listen up, what had happened then was I realized that I shared the same last name as my teacher. Her name was Mrs. Botha. And I thought to myself, listen, surely this is going to be fantastic because we share the same last name. But it didn't work out like that exactly. Juffrou Botha, or Mrs. Botha, was quite strict, and I realized very quickly that sharing the last name with your teacher didn't get you any perks, especially if you didn't keep quiet while she was teaching. And so she really put me very quickly into my place. Besides having the last name of some of South Africa's prominent political leaders and sports stars, came with a huge responsibility. You had to be a man of integrity and discipline, all of which I still had to grow into, of course. But at least my school years started off a little bit better than what I had anticipated with the move back to Brakpan. To bring it back home, things were not too bad either, except for the fact that Dad still didn't have a job, and Mom's illness was still an issue. It wasn't really getting any better. She still heard voices telling her to do certain weird things, like lying on the ground or sitting in the bathtub with cold water. And the difficult aspect of this was that she believed that these voices came from God, and it was God telling her to do these things. Now, it was very hard for me to understand this, because she wasn't really happy in those situations. She was quite distraught, and there was always this battle of her mind going on. And what this basically meant for us, as I shared in the previous chapter, was that our church life was basically non-existent. We were not really able to attend church because, we never knew what Mom would do. And it was quite stressful. Any public appearance with my mother would be very stressful. Things were then going along in 1992, and I had managed to settle into school pretty well. But then I met up with another boy who used to be my neighbor on the plot, and his name was also Rudy. He was about 3 years older than I was. And they had moved very close to our new school, basically a couple of blocks to the school. And so I developed this habit that every morning, as I was riding my bike to school, I would first stop at their house and visit with them, and then we would ride our bikes to school. And then what had happened was Rudy started having an influence on me, in the fact that, some bad choices were made. I remember specifically a very serious incident that had taken place. Rudy had convinced me that we should skip school, we should play hooky one morning. I would arrive with my bicycle the morning, and we would hang out and watch cartoons, and then act as if we were going to ride to school. And then we would just wait around the corner or around the block, and for his father to leave home for work, and we would then quickly ride with our bicycles back to his house and spend the day just watching TV and cartoons. Now, in the end, that decision was really bad, because it was the longest day of my life. It was super boring, and in the end, what had happened was Rudy got us into deep trouble. You see, he got a lot of money out of his father's drawer. We went to the corner cafe to buy sweets, came back as if nothing was really going to happen to us. But then the next day, it was devastating. The next morning I arrived at his house again, and his father was furious. His dad had realized that some of the money was gone, had spoken to their housekeeper or maid, and then the maid affirmed that the two of us were actually at home the previous day, and it must have been us that took the money. And so what had happened was Rudy blamed me. He told his dad that I was the one who must have taken the money because he didn't know where the money came from. And he said that I had this big stash of cash that he was wondering about. Where did I get it? And I was crying my eyes out. I was just crying out for mercy. And I said, I promise you, sir, I've got no idea what he's talking about. As far as I know, this was Rudy. He told me that he got the money from you. And remember, I had shared that the theme of this chapter is that, bad company spoils good character. And this was exactly that situation. Because what had happened was, in the end, Rudy then admitted to having stolen the money, as his father was really becoming impatient with him and was going to get the strap to beat his son. I'm not sure if it was going to beat me, but in the end Rudy admitted it, and I knew that I had to get out of that house, and I had to stay away. And so he was a bad influence on my life with regards to that. And together with that, I just want to share that I share here in the book is it just blew up into my face as well, because with every bad decision that I made, and every lie that I told, I had to cover it up again with another lie. Because what had happened after that day of playing hooky was, of course, I had to go home, and I didn't know what the homework was for that day, and I had to lie to my friends about where I was because they thought I was ill. My parents had asked me how school was, so I had to make up some kind of story about how it was. Vanner was asking me questions, and I had to tell some lies to him. And so this was just eating at my conscience. But you see, my bad choices with friends also didn't stop there. Together with that, like I said, I had made this friend, Andre Mostert, on the first day of school. And what had happened with Andre was he was a really funny guy, and he made me laugh quite a lot. The problem was he made me laugh at the wrong times. He was really good at pulling funny faces and, sort of like his eyebrows, and maybe that's where I got some of my eyebrow movements. But in any case, and he would always do this in class when the teacher was teaching, and I would laugh. All of a sudden I would get in trouble. But what had happened with Andre was the two of us realized that our teacher, Mrs. Botha, had a cash register that she kept her cash in from selling sweets and all kinds of snacks in class. And she kept this cash register in the back of her car. And how we knew this was she asked us a couple of times after school to go and take all of her stationery and all of her workbooks to her car. And then we discovered this cash register. And so Andre suggested that we just take 2 rands, 2 rand each, every time that she asked us to take her stuff to the car. But unfortunately, this again led to some snowballing effects, because I was then asked by Vanner where I got the money from when we went to the corner cafe to go buy sweets or play arcade games. And I would make up some kind of story. And then what had happened was this teacher, Mrs. Botha, realized that some money was disappearing, and she started hearing some rumors about us stealing the money. And she then sent a little spy after us the one time that she sent us to her car. And just as we were going to take the money, I noticed out of the corner of my eye someone was coming in, and I said to Andre, leave it. And then we closed the car boot or trunk, headed back to the classroom, and then she interrogated us. She wanted to know, listen, have we been taking any of her money? Because she's noticed money is gone and she's been hearing rumors. And I just full out denied it. I totally denied it. Andre denied it, and we lied. We lied straight to her face without admitting that we were guilty. And so I was confronted with this issue of friendship in grade 3 already, and how I was seeing the devastating effect of having the wrong friends. And so even though things were going well at this new school, I knew that at that stage that, listen, something's got to change here. I can't carry on like this. I was in the wrong friendship. And so I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to leave you there because I need to take Miriam for a bike ride. And I will carry on reading or sharing with you from this chapter after we've done that. Cheers.